Hey everybody, I wanted to talk to you today about acid-base balance. One of the major challenges, one of the major things that you need to do to maintain homeostasis is to keep your hydrogen ion concentrations in each of your body fluid compartments, so intracellular fluid, extracellular fluid, blood plasma, interstitial fluid. You need to keep appropriate levels of these hydrogen ions. And even pH stands for the power of hydrogen. The more hydrogen ions you have, the more acidic the solution. The fewer hydrogen ions you have, the more alkaline or basic the solution. And this is important because the three-dimensional shape of your proteins is very sensitive to pH. And we see this even just looking at the digestive system. Pepsin, for example, will work in the stomach at a very acidic pH, but it will not work in the small intestine at a more neutral pH. pH of your blood plasma falls between 7.35 and 7.45. And so the proteins that are present there need to have a stable pH. And you have plenty of plasma proteins present in your blood. So it's really important to maintain this pH homeostasis. If you consume a diet with a large amount of protein, this ends up producing more acids than bases, which can acidify the blood. So diets very high in protein can cause acidosis. There are different mechanisms that you can use in order to maintain pH of your arterial blood in this proper pH range. There are buffer systems. Your respiratory system can help regulate it, and you also have renal excretion, so your kidneys can help you to get rid of this. These hydrogen ions. Your body is always producing acid, either lactic acid through anaerobic fermentation, so if there's no oxygen present, then from glycolysis that pyruvic acid turns into lactic acid. As you catabolize nucleic acids such as DNA and RNA, you produce phosphoric acids. Lipid catabolism will produce fatty acids and ketones. Carbon dioxide will ultimately result in carbonic acid. So you're constantly producing acid all over your body, and you need to eliminate any excess acid. Buffer systems are a great way to do this. They can act very quickly, and they can temporarily and reversibly bind hydrogen ions. They can help to raise pH when they bind these hydrogen ions, but they're not completely removed from the body. And so if your pH ends up starting to go too high, they can release these hydrogen ions back into the blood. Most of these systems consist of a weak acid and then the salt of that acid that functions as a weak base. And I'll show you what I mean in these examples. There are three main buffer systems in your body: the bicarbonate buffer system, phosphate buffer system, and the protein buffer system. The bicarbonate buffer system you may remember from discussing in the respiratory system and in the kidneys. This is based on the bicarbonate ion, which is that HCO3-, which acts as a weak base, and carbonic acid, H2CO3, acts as a weak acid. This is a major buffer in the extracellular fluid because that is primarily where you find bicarbonate ion. But it also functions as an intracellular fluid buffer. So just a refresher on that equation: carbon dioxide will bind with water to produce carbonic acid right here. And frequently right here you see carbonic anhydrase helping this reaction along. It doesn't require carbonic anhydrase, but you do see that enzyme pretty frequently throughout the body. So carbonic anhydrase will likely help CO2 plus H2O become H2CO3, which is carbonic acid. And then this molecule will dissociate into hydrogen ion, which is going to be very acidic, right? And HCO3-, which is bicarbonate ion, and it is a weak base. So what you see here as an example, if you have hydrochloric acid, which is a strong acid, and then you have sodium bicarbonate right here, this can rearrange to become a weak acid. So this HCO3, that should look familiar, bicarbonate, this can take on that hydrogen right there. So this hydrogen removes itself from the chloride and attaches to bicarbonate to become a weaker acid, carbonic acid, and a salt. Here's your sodium that was left over and a chloride that's left over. And you can also look at this if you have a strong base. This carbonic acid bicarbonate buffer system is also able to buffer bases. So if you have sodium hydroxide, for example, NaOH. That's a very strong base. It can combine with carbonic acid, which is a weak acid, and it can rearrange to form this weak base. So you have NaHCO3, so that's sodium bicarbonate, that's the same thing we saw here, and H2O. So what happened was you had one of the hydrogens here combined with your OH, and then you have NaHCO3 right here. So you can rearrange these equations. The your carbonic acid and bicarbonate are able to buffer strong bases and strong bases, and turn them into weak acids and weak bases. And so that negates large changes that may occur on the pH of your blood. The phosphate buffer system works in a similar manner. A dihydrogen phosphate is H2PO4, and monohydrogen phosphate has one fewer hydrogen, just HPO4. These are major anions that you see in the intracellular fluid and a little bit in the extracellular fluid, but especially intracellular fluid. And this is going to be an important regulator of the pH within the cytosol because it's so prevalent in the intracellular fluid. So H2PO4 can remove a hydrogen, becoming HPO4 and this hydrogen ion. So if you have a strong acid, HCl, hydrochloric acid for example, this can combine with a weak base. So sodium, and you've got your monophosphate right here. That can rearrange to become a weak acid. You take off this hydrogen, stick it on the phosphate, and a salt, NaCl. So this chloride here and this sodium here will get together. And then the phosphate takes on the burden of that extra hydrogen. But instead of a strong acid, now you have a weak acid. This also works for strong bases. So sodium hydroxide, for example, right here. And here's your weak acid. You have sodium, and then here's your dihydrogen phosphate. And that can turn the strong base into a weak base. Again, this phosphate is going to take on that extra hydrogen, and then you rearrange the equation so that you end up with water. The protein buffer system is the last buffer system we'll talk about, and it is the most abundant buffer in the intracellular fluid and the blood plasma. And this is because you've got hemoglobins within your red blood cells, and you also have a substantial amount of albumin in your blood plasma. It's the most common plasma protein. And so what happens with the protein buffer system is your free carboxyl group is going to act like an acid and releases hydrogen. The amino group can act like a base to combine with hydrogen, so it picks up hydrogen ions. And then there are the side chains on several of your amino acids can also help to buffer hydrogen. So a quick refresher of what your amino acids look like. Central carbon ion, here's your R group. This is what's going to be different from amino acid to amino acid, and you have a hydrogen. Here is your acid group, so COOH. So this is your carboxylic acid. It is able to release a hydrogen into your blood so that it can help to raise the pH that way. Your amine group is this NH2 right here, and this is able to take on an additional hydrogen ion, so it can help remove hydrogen ions from your blood. Respiratory regulation from your respiratory system can help regulate pH by changing how much carbon dioxide is in your blood. If you have an increase in carbon dioxide in your body fluids, this is going to end up lowering the pH. And that's because, if you remember that equation that seems to be everywhere, carbon dioxide will combine with water, which will then turn into carbonic acid, thanks to carbonic anhydrase usually. And then carbonic acid can then dissociate into bicarbonate ion and hydrogen ion. The more of this hydrogen ion you have, the more acidic your body solution is, or it will lower the pH. And so if you have an increase in carbon dioxide, this is going to end up lowering the pH of your body fluid. If you have a rise in the partial pressure of carbon dioxide, this PCO2, This is going to activate chemoreceptors in your medulla, which is going to increase your respiratory rate and depth. So you're going to breathe more quickly and you're going to breathe more deeply so that you can exhale more of this carbon dioxide that's been built up. And so as you exhale this carbon dioxide, that equation is going to move in the other direction. So carbonic acid ends up being eliminated. So hydrogen ion combines with your bicarbonate ion to turn back into carbonic acid. Carbonic acid then dissociates into carbon dioxide and water, and you'll exhale that carbon dioxide. And because you can eliminate carbonic acid by exhaling carbon dioxide, it's called a volatile acid. And if you change the rate and depth of your breathing, this can change pH within a few minutes. And it's a negative feedback loop. So as soon as your pH is back to normal, it will shut off those chemoreceptors, or the chemoreceptors will stop sending information, causing that change in your respiratory rate. Respiratory regulation, however, is pretty limited. It is able to work very quickly to alter your pH, but it can't alter your pH a huge amount. So regulation of this acid. So here on the blue box, abnormal increases in respiratory rate. So if you are hyperventilating, for example, this is going to lead to you expiring or exhaling more carbon dioxide. As you get rid of that carbon dioxide, that means there's going to be less in your body, less in your blood. So when you look here at your blood, all this carbon dioxide is leaving your body, which means this carbonic acid, which we were talking about just a minute ago, that is going to continue to dissociate into carbon dioxide, and you keep getting rid of that carbon dioxide when you exhale. And the source of this carbonic acid is from your bicarbonate ion, which you see very commonly in your blood plasma. It combines with this this hydrogen ion. So the more that you exhale, the more that you are going to increase your pH because you're getting rid of these hydrogen ions. The same thing, vice versa, can happen if you have abnormal decreases. So if you, let's say you have COPD, a chronic obstructive pulmonary disorder. If you are not expiring as much, you're not exhaling as much CO2, then that CO2 remains in your blood. More CO2 here is going to drive this equation to the right. So it combines with water to make carbonic acid. Carbonic acid dissociates into hydrogen ion and bicarbonate ion. More of this hydrogen ion results in a more acidic solution, so you decrease your pH. So you can see it's pretty directly related. More carbon dioxide, more hydrogen. Less carbon dioxide, you increase your pH, more alcohol. Finally, in addition to buffer systems and respiratory regulation, there are also renal mechanisms that can help to maintain homeostasis of your pH. Metabolic reactions are going to produce a lot of non-volatile reactions, so you can't exhale them, you can't get rid of them by exhaling. These have to be excreted in your urine. In your proximal convoluted tubule of your nephron, you've got sodium, hydrogen ion antiporters that are going to secrete or get rid of hydrogen ions as you reabsorb sodium back into your blood. Intercalated cells in your collecting duct also have proton pumps that are going to push this hydrogen ion into your tubular fluid. And this tubular fluid ultimately will become part of your urine. Urine can be up to 1,000 times more acidic than your blood because of all this hydrogen that's being pumped in there. There are two other buffers that can combine with hydrogen in your collecting duct, and this is that monohydrogen phosphate and this amine group, ammonium. Bicarbonate reabsorption and hydrogen ion secretion. So this equation hopefully looks familiar to you. We visited this with the talking about reabsorption with the kidneys. Carbon dioxide, which you can acquire from the tubule lumen or from the blood, enters this proximal convoluted tubule cell. Carbon dioxide combines with water. Water turns into carbonic acid, H2CO3, thanks to this carbonic anhydrase right here. This enzyme can help to catalyze this reaction. Carbonic acid then dissociates into bicarbonate ion, which you can move out into the blood and then this hydrogen ion is going to actively be transported into this tubule lumen so that you can excrete this hydrogen ion while you're also bringing in this this sodium ion. So this functioning of this antiporter because it's moving in two different directions, it does need energy, but you're not going to use ATP to fuel this secondary active transport right here. The reason that this antiporter works is because you have this sodium-potassium pump right here. It does use ATP for energy. You're constantly pushing sodium out, which you can then reabsorb in the blood. And this maintains a low concentration of sodium in your proximal convoluted tubule cell. This enables sodium to move down its concentration gradient. As it does so, it's able to move another substance. In this case, it's hydrogen ions out into the tubule lumen. And so this is one way you can get rid of hydrogen ions while you are reabsorbing bicarbonate ions, which functions as a buffer in your blood. You can also use, so while you're moving all this hydrogen ion out into your urine, you'll need to buffer it. Otherwise, your urine can be extremely acidic. So you can see the functioning of an intercalated cell here. So an intercalated cell, this is a type A intercalated cell. It's going to help you to eliminate acid. So you have water and carbon dioxide combine thanks to carbonic anhydrase, turns into carbonic acid. Carbonic acid then dissociates, same old stuff. Your hydrogen ion right here is going to be pushed into the tubule lumen thanks to this ATPase. So you are using ATP right here, primary active transport. This hydrogen ion is very, very acidic, and so you're going to combine that with this monohydrogen phosphate. Now you have dihydrogen phosphate, which is a weaker acid. So this is going to help buffer the acidity of your urine as you're pumping all of this hydrogen ion into your tubule, which will eventually become part of your urine. This bicarbonate ion is going to move into your blood, and you can see it's using this bicarbonate chloride antiporter right here. You might remember seeing this also with the parietal cells. This is in the stomach. This is responsible for the alkaline tide because of all this bicarbonate moving in. You can see this chloride can just drift back out, so you can basically recycle it. But it is important. The main point of this slide is this buffer that happens right here. The other way that you can buffer the amount of hydrogen ions in your urine is by using an ammonium ion. So glutamine is an amino acid. You can bring it in from the filtrate, or you can bring it in from the interstitial fluid here into your tubule cell. So this is proximal convoluted tubule. So glutamine can be deaminated, so you rip off that NH2. You can oxidize it. Oxidation is losing electrons, and then acidify it. Add the hydrogen ion. So instead of pumping hydrogen ion directly into the tubule lumen over here, instead you're going to add it to this amine group, and that is going to become an ammonium ion. So you end up making two of these ammonium ions and two bicarbonate ions. These ammonium ions will head into your tubule lumen right here, and from here it will frequently combine with chloride and become ammonium chloride. So this NH4 ends up going out in your urine. You can see there's an antiporter here. So sodium is going down its concentration gradient while ammonium is being moved out. This should look very similar to what we looked at previously with the sodium and hydrogen ion antiporter. And so instead of transporting just plain hydrogen ion out here, ammonium is going to take its place, and it is a much weaker acid than just plain hydrogen ion. And so that helps to buffer the urine as well. And then the rest of this diagram is the same stuff that we've seen. You've got a sodium bicarbonate symporter here that's moving sodium out and moving bicarbonate ion out so that you end up reabsorbing that in your blood. This is also going to help buffer the blood, as we talked about before. You've got a sodium potassium pump right here using using ATP, and this is going to help establish that concentration gradient of sodium, constantly moving sodium out here as well as here. Both of these transporters move sodium out, and this is going to help maintain a low concentration of sodium in the cell, which is going to help this antiporter to work. Bring sodium in, push ammonium ion out into your tubule lumen. Just a quick refresher on intercalated cells. We've discussed the type A intercalated cell before. Moving hydrogen ions out, reabsorbing bicarbonate into your blood. Remember, type B intercalated cells would work the other way, although that would be less frequently used. Usually you have too much hydrogen and you need to get rid of it. But you do have some type B intercalated cells. We'd go through this equation we've discussed. But instead of reabsorbing bicarbonate, you would reabsorb your hydrogen ion and secrete bicarbonate ion in type B intercalated cells. Type B intercalated cells help you eliminate base. Type A intercalated cells help you eliminate acid. There are some acid-base imbalances that can occur if the pH range of your arterial blood goes outside of the 7.35, 7.45 range. Acidosis occurs if your pH drops below 7.35. This is going to result in the depression of your synaptic transmissions in your central nervous system. So brain and spinal cord, those neurons are not going to be able to send nerve impulses as easily, their action potentials. Alkalosis is when you have blood pH above 7.45. And this is going to result in the overexcitability of your CNS, your brain and spinal cord, as well as your peripheral nerves. So they're going to fire nerve impulses more readily, more quickly. Now, when you are correcting arterial blood pH, so if you are returning to homeostasis, this occurs through compensation. You can have complete compensation if you have completely returned your blood pH in that 7.35, 7.45 range. It can be partial compensation where you've corrected it some, but it's still a little bit too low or too high. Respiratory compensation is due to hyperventilation or hypoventilation. So you're adjusting the rate and depth of your breathing in order to exhale that additional CO2. Or you can have renal compensation, where this involves the secretion of hydrogen ions and reabsorption of bicarbonate ions. Respiratory acidosis is due to abnormally high partial pressure of CO2 in your systemic arterial blood. And this is usually because you're not exhaling enough CO2. And this can be caused by anything that is going to limit how much carbon dioxide you can move out. So hypoventilation, if you're not breathing quickly enough or deeply enough. Emphysema or any kind of chronic obstructive pulmonary disorder, asthma, pulmonary edema, where you have swelling in your lungs, airway obstruction, anything that is going to impede the movement of carbon dioxide out of your lungs can cause respiratory acidosis. Kidneys can help with this. They can help to raise your blood pH by retaining more of those hydrogen ions. But the goal is to find out what's the problem with the blockage and move carbon dioxide more quickly. My baby says hello. Respiratory alkalosis is caused by abnormally low carbon dioxide in your systemic arterial blood. So if you have been hyperventilating, and this can be due to oxygen deficiency if you're at a high altitude, or if you've got some sort of pulmonary disease, if you've had a stroke, and so you are leaking blood with that carbon dioxide. If you have any kind of severe anxiety or pain, this can result in hyperventilation as well. And renal compensation can help with this. So one potential treatment is breathing into a paper bag. You would bring back in that carbon dioxide. Remember, in the respiratory system, that gases move from an area of high pressure to low pressure. So if you have very low carbon dioxide in your pulmonary capillaries and it's higher in the atmospheric air that you're breathing, especially if you're breathing into a paper bag where any carbon dioxide you exhale would be right in that space, you can bring that carbon dioxide back into your blood. Metabolic acidosis is due to abnormally low bicarbonate ion in your systemic arterial blood. So anything that respiratory acidosis and alkalosis are due to abnormally high or low carbon dioxide, metabolic acidosis, and alkalosis due to bicarbonate issues. So metabolic acidosis, abnormally low bicarbonate ion. Remember, bicarbonate is going to be a little bit alkaline. So if you don't have enough, it can cause acidosis. And this is because you have lost too much bicarbonate from if you've got severe diarrhea, if you have too much alcohol ingestion because that's metabolized to acetic acid. If you have renal dysfunction, it can cause metabolic acidosis. Any accumulation of an acid other than carbonic acid, remember you can exhale that, but anything else can lead to ketosis, failure of your kidneys to get rid of enough hydrogen ion because from production from metabolism, or if you are consuming too many dietary proteins and you can't get rid of enough acid, all of these things can cause metabolic acidosis. Hyperventilation can help by correcting the pH that way, or you can administer intravenous sodium bicarbonate and just directly correct the cause. Alkalosis is due to too much bicarbonate ion in your systemic arterial blood. So any loss of acid that's not due to your respiratory system, so chronic vomiting, for example, or gastric suctioning, if you're taking way too many antacids, which are alkaline, certain diuretics cause you to lose acid, or severe dehydration can cause metabolic acidosis. Hypoventilation can help. Retaining carbon dioxide will lead to retaining hydrogen ions, right? That's going to move your pH back down. If you give fluid solutions, you can correct chloride and potassium and other electrolyte deficiencies, and this can actually correct alkalosis. I'll talk about that in just a second. So metabolic issues due to bicarbonate problems, respiratory issues due to carbon dioxide problems. If you have respiratory acidosis or alkalosis, your kidneys can change how much hydrogen ion is being secreted. If you have metabolic acidosis or alkalosis issues, respiratory changes can help. So hyper or hypoventilation can help. So this is why acidosis or alkalosis can lead to changes in the ability of your neurons to send a nerve impulse. So during acidosis, looking at this top picture, you have too many hydrogen ions, right? Leading to a lowering of your pH. These hydrogen ions will move into your neurons. Neurons are supposed to have a very high concentration of intracellular potassium, but this potassium moves out as you have this hydrogen come in. Potassium, if you don't have enough potassium in the cell, then you're not going to be able to send nerve impulses very easily. So what happens is hydrogen ions, these purple dots, come in and bind to proteins. And then as a result, now all this positive charge entering, potassium is going to leave the cell. This is going to hyperpolarize your resting membrane potential. So RMP, resting membrane potential is hyperpolarized. This is going to make it more difficult to reach threshold. You will not be able to stimulate your nerves or your muscle cells, for that matter, as easily. And so as a result, this acidotic conditions are going to depress your central nervous system, brain and spinal cord. It's also going to cause confusion, disorientation, and can put you into a coma. On the other hand, alkalosis. So if you don't have enough hydrogen ions, let's say they're all inside the cell, you don't have enough in your extracellular fluid. Any potassium that you have in your extracellular fluid comes into the cell. This is going to cause this proteins and hydrogen ions to dissociate. Hydrogen ions leave the cell. So now you have tons and tons over and above potassium ions, more than what you need, inside your cell. And you have all these hydrogen ions on the outside of the cell. So you have hypokalemia. You don't have enough potassium in your extracellular fluid. And although it is normally an intracellular, that's more commonly found in intracellular fluid, you do need a little bit of potassium in your extracellular fluid. So hypokalemia, all this hydrogen ion is moved to the outside, and all of your potassium has been moved to the inside. So you gain too many potassium ions in your cell. This is going to polarize it, and so it becomes much easier to reach threshold because your resting membrane potential is higher. This leads to overstimulation of your neurons, causes muscle spasms, tetanus, convulsions, and respiratory paralysis. So it's way too easy. You get overstimulation of your neurons and in your muscles. So acidosis leads to hyperkalemia, and alkalosis leads to hypokalemia. So another reason why maintaining proper pH balance is very important for your body.